So with that, let's welcome in the man himself, Chris Hummer, and we will begin in Columbus, where they are looking for a replacement for Marvin Harrison Jr. In comes Jeremiah Smith, the #1 overall recruit in the 2024 class. How immediate could his impact be with the Buckeyes?
Like tomorrow, like today, like last week. I think Jeremiah Smith probably could have played for Ohio State last year. He is just a different level of talent at receiver. And it sounds ridiculous to say like somebody could replace Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the most talented receivers we've seen in college football over the last decade. But Jeremiah Smith has that potential. He has that ability. People have raved about Jeremiah Smith since the moment he stepped foot on campus in Columbus. His quarterbacks have raved about him. Ryan Day has raved about him. His offensive coordinators raved about him. This is somebody that Ohio State had to hold off at the very last second in a bidding war with Miami to keep him in their class. And there's a reason for that. He is the top receiver in 24/7 sports history. And I think he can be one of like the 20 or 25 best receivers in college football next year. He'll be a starter. He'll start right next to Micah and Buka. And it wouldn't really shock me if like it was a 1A, 1B conversation with Micah and Buka, one of the best receivers in college football himself.
Yeah, I love how you say he could be ready today, yesterday, because I was just reading on a different article on our site. He showed up to Columbus with a body that looked like he was ready for Ohio State's NFL Pro Day, not for his first collegiate practice. That one came from Brad Crawford. But let's stay with the wide receivers here and go to Auburn next. They haven't had a wide receiver drafted to the NFL in the last 3 seasons. Huge position of need for them. Here comes Cam Coleman, part of a fantastic wide receiver group on the Plains. What kind of impact do you think Cam Coleman could have?
Yeah, he's going to be like a 20-volt battery for that offense. They desperately needed somebody like Cam Coleman on the outside. I don't believe a single Auburn receiver had more than 350 yards last season. That passing game really struggled in year one with Peyton Thorne as the passer and Hugh Freeze coming in as the head coach. And Hugh Freeze is known for his vertical passing game, his big play receivers, his big play offense. They just didn't have the personnel to really push the ball the way Hugh Freeze would like to. Cam Coleman and then Keandre Lambert-Smith coming in from Penn State really give Auburn that ability. People publicly have talked glowingly about Cam Coleman. People behind the scenes have talked glowingly about Cam Coleman. I see the highlights every day, and I remember asking somebody on that staff, like, is it consistent? Do we actually get this every day in practice? And the source said he dominates every single day in practice. It's unbelievable. He's that type of player for Auburn. I think he's going to be a day one difference maker and change Auburn's offense.
Let's go to Nebraska next, where Dylan Raiola is a legacy prospect for the Huskers after flipping from Georgia. Now, Matt Rule has tried to make this sound like a quarterback competition in the offseason, I suppose, as he should. But there is a path for him to steal this starting job. How do you actually like his chances of that happening, Chris?
I would be surprised if he didn't earn the starting job, to be honest. In this era of college football, if this was 1980, it'd be a different conversation. In this era of college football, you do not flip from Georgia to Nebraska to sit on the bench. Dylan Raiola is Nebraska's future. He's going to be Nebraska's presence. I would be shocked if he didn't start the large majority of games this year for Nebraska, and I would be surprised if he wasn't the day one starter. He had a really nice spring game for Nebraska. That was our first public opportunity to see him. I think he went 16 for 22 with 240 yards. He looked pretty polished. I think they're going to try to ease him into things and make things for him comfortable early in the year. But Nebraska needs its future to start now, and there's really no reason not to hand him the keys right away. Like, he is not going to jumpstart Nebraska back to prominence in year one, but the best way to get started is to get him started, and that involves getting him on the field.
Now, looking at your list for Alabama impact freshmen, you have 4 listed as impact players. 3 of them are cornerbacks, but the one you want to talk about is Zabian Brown. How do you expect him to make an impact?
Well, Zabian Brown was starting by the end of spring practice for Alabama. Part of that is due to numbers. Alabama's cornerback room is devastated with NFL draft departures. Obviously, Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry both going early in the NFL draft, in addition to multiple players entering the transfer portal in the wake of Nick Saban's retirement. So that left Zabian Brown there to grab reps this spring, and he did so. He impressed. He ended the spring as a starter. And this is somebody coming from Mater Dei High School, one of the top high schools in the country, a California powerhouse, who is about as ready to play as any cornerback in the country. He was a multi-year starter there. He is sticky on the receiver. He's long with good length. Maybe not like super high top end speed, but he makes up for it with his ability to track the football and to make plays on the ball. I think this is somebody who's going to be, at worst, a huge part of Alabama's secondary this year. And I think he is at least in position to challenge for a starting spot, despite the fact that Alabama brought in Deshaun Jones from Wake Forest.
Texas Tech was able to sign its biggest recruit in program history, and wide receiver Micah Hudson, ranked number 25 overall in the most recent cycle. You would think, being Texas Tech, they'd have to start a five-star player like that with the momentum that type of player brings in. But how likely is it that he starts as a freshman?
I think he's got a very good chance to start. When spring ball was over, I messaged somebody on Texas Tech staff and asked how Micah Hudson did during the spring, and they just said he's an absolute freak. He has impressed since the moment he walked on campus. He, as you said, is one of the biggest recruiting wins, if not the biggest, in Texas Tech history. He is kind of the centerpiece of Joey McGuire's excellent recruiting efforts as the head coach there. That staff has done a really good job identifying high-end talent and being willing to develop them. But Micah Hudson's a different type of player. He is ready to make an impact day one. I watched Micah Hudson play live in high school several times. He played about an hour down the road from me. He dominated on Friday nights, and I think he's going to be very effective on Saturday afternoons in the fall.
Miami has an influx of offensive talent coming in. One of the most intriguing prospects is the tight end, Elijah Lofton, who can do it all. He even lined up at running back. So what kind of impact could he have?
I had somebody on Miami staff tell me he was like a Miami prospect of 20 years ago, and they meant that in the very best way. 20 years ago is when Miami was competing for national championships and was one of the most dominant programs in the country. And they think Elijah Lofton is that type of player for Miami. He is a player the program can build around, and he's really fun. Like, as you said, he was doing some work at running back. He's 6'2", 250. He's going to play tight end. I think if they put him at linebacker, he would be an impact player. I think if you put him on the edge, he'd be an impact player. He's just the type of player for Miami who's going to be a difference maker in year one. I think they have really high hopes for him contributing not only on offense, but on special teams as well. And I think he's a really intriguing piece for them moving forward. He is a building block in the 2024 class.
All right, now, before you go, I have to ask you about the news of the day because you live in Big 12 country. The Big 12 is exploring selling its naming rights to a title sponsor. So this could mean, for those who don't know, the commercial sponsor would potentially take the name Big out of the Big 12 and replace it with the sponsor's name. Totally new in college football. Chris, what was your reaction to this news?
Well, first, I thought it was funny that the Big 12 decided to keep 12 and not the Big, given that the Big 12 hasn't had 12 teams in I don't even know how many years it's been since that happened. And like secretly would really love to see like a Whataburger 12 or something. Just got a rep for my Texas fast food institutions. But I think when you pull the lens back and you consider this from a 10,000-foot angle, the Big 12 has to figure out a way to make up ground on the SEC and the Big 10 from a revenue perspective. We are entering a new era of college athletics where revenue is even more important. Schools are going to have to fork over $20 to $22 million a year to compensate their student athletes. There are more revenue challenges than ever before. And if the Big 12 wants to remain competitive in that landscape, it's going to have to get creative because it doesn't have the television contracts to do so. And what you're seeing is Brett Yormark do that via naming rights, which honestly, like, as much easy it is to make fun of this, like, it is a very easy way to generate another $2 million per school. Like, it doesn't hurt anybody to call yourself the Whataburger 12 or the Dr. Pepper 12 or whatever you want to do.
That would be amazing.
So it would be hilarious, and I really root for it. I think we saw some reporting it would be the All-State 12, which is not nearly as fun. But this is just a creative way to make up ground by the Big 12.
Lots of changes in college football, and Chris Hummer is on top of it all. Thanks for joining us, Chris. And remember, you can see his new article listing all 100 first-year players who will make an impact this upcoming season over on 24/7 Sports. Lots of great content over there. Subscribe for the VIP content. That's 247sports.com.